Thank you, Madam Chair. And just as a follow-up to Senator Lujan's comments on some of these, there are tens of billions of dollars available, and yet I met last week or the week before with our independent telephone co-ops in South Dakota, and not a single one was applying for any of that money, partly because of all the regulations and red tape and requirements that have been attached to it. You have to meet certain, you got to hire certain types of people. The unions had their say in that, and we're a right-to-work state. We don't have that kind of workforce. And then, of course, there's all the climate requirements you have to prove. But yes, there are a lot of places in South Dakota, like the state that you represent, New Mexico, that desperately need that connectivity. And there are companies that are willing to invest and put money into it, but that to me was pretty striking, that not a single one of them was going to apply for that funding because it just didn't make sense for them economically. Let me come back, and I'm going to try and combine several questions here into one, Dr. Griffiths. I think it's really important, and there's a bipartisan bill that I'm working on that's focused on putting the right guardrails in place for the highest impact AI systems, while also at the same time allowing for innovation. I think that's an important balance we have to strike. But I believe it's important as we think about that, that we highlight, we keep the innovation there, but we also know that there are riskier applications that are going to need a little bit of at least some amount of guardrails around it. So could you give a few examples of, and you mentioned this in your testimony, how new AI systems and tools are being used, to benefit agriculture. Secondly, what some of those risks are and why Congress needs to establish at least a light touch approach with respect to guardrails for AI deployment. And then you also mentioned in the threat of unfriendly nations asserting themselves into U.S. agriculture, and maybe touch briefly why it's important for the U.S. to lead in innovation on artificial intelligence to stay ahead of some of those unfriendly nations that are also trying to deploy it in ways that would perhaps be detrimental to us.
Thank you, Senator, for the complex question. Well, first of all, in terms of how AI is being used, we've talked a lot about that today. Precision agriculture, or precision farming, precision ranching is being incorporated to improve yield, cut down on data processing, and inform better farming practices. Examples include autonomous farming, the use of self-driving tractors, robots for crop inspection, and crop harvesting. Sorry, I am not an agricultural specialist, so I'm learning the vocabulary of agriculture. Autonomous systems used for spraying, etc. And a number of agricultural startups are leveraging the power of data to use AI to better inform practice. And I do believe that with some of recent developments in artificial intelligence technologies, the cost of entry is lowering. Not so much for the large data to train AI systems, but then once you've got the AI system available, you can apply it to your own environment at a much lower expense. I think there are a lot of things that we can do at there's the individual field and the individual herd, if you like, that you can manage, but now you can go up a level and talk about how do you optimize the use of land, how do you optimize, we've talked about soil health and things of that kind. All of those are better informed by AI. In terms of establishing guardrails, I do believe very strongly in a lighter touch than heavy-duty regulation, because the moment regulation gets too much, innovation shrinks naturally. And the United States has always had a lighter touch on regulation than other parts of the world, particularly, for example, Europe, which has its AI framework. So I think it's important that we ensure that innovation can occur, but at the same time that we can have these guardrails to help mitigate risks. And I know the beginnings of this have already started with companies' volunteering efforts to make sure that they're appropriately secure, and hopefully that will continue, and then hopefully the Senate and the House will begin to put some of these lighter guardrails in place. I do think under-regulation would put the industry and the public at risk, so it is that nuanced balance between how much regulation is sufficient So involving the agricultural producers and providers and technologists in the conversation, I think, is going to be very important. And then in terms of unfriendly nations, we do get concerned. That tends to be the high end of cybersecurity that I worry about on a regular basis, keeps me up at night. The United States has a lead in artificial intelligence. It has the lead in the high-end research activities. It has the advantage in the high-end chips that are a piece of the infrastructure needed to do high-end AI research. Some other countries are very interested in this, some because they want to use it for good, others because they don't wish us well. And I do think that, that the United States needs to stay in a lead role. And then we might see unfriendly countries, or let's say less friendly countries, perhaps they will become fast followers of whatever we produce. So whatever we produce, they're going to take up as quickly as they can and mimic and deploy on their own. But I do think it's important to maintain that research edge. It's what I believe has kept the United States in the lead for many, many decades. And I think it's important that investing in research in AI applications across multiple sectors is going to be very important. But we're really talking about one of the 15 critical infrastructures in the United States. Agriculture is a critical infrastructure. It came quite late to the area of cybersecurity, if I might say. I think 2015, we finally saw the first USDA report on that. And I think it's important to bring the agricultural sector into this world very, very quickly to advance the benefits of AI, which is moving very, very quickly and is going to need the various infrastructures that exist, including 5G, and at the same time, making sure we protect that infrastructure so the United States can stay 1 or 2 generations ahead of much of the rest of the world. It's the only way we're going to be able to move forward.
It's been remarkable just the progress we've already made in precision agriculture and what that's done on yields and just productivity in our country and how that's improved the bottom lines of agriculture, but also, as I mentioned earlier, makes us more competitive globally. Very quickly here, I see Senator Hoven here. Let me ask Mr. Hinman, when we think about precision ag technologies and how they're utilized, how important is it that we, as policymakers, take a tech-neutral approach with respect to broadband deployment?
I think it's very important. I think the reality is to connect the last acre requires a different solution than to connect the last household. And in precision agriculture, it's that last acre that's important.
Okay, thank you. My time's expired, Madam Chair. I might submit some questions for the record, but thank you all.